Already ravaged from a decade of war, Syrian emergency efforts are being further complicated by politics. While most of Syria is controlled by the government in Damascus, much of the north is controlled by opposition groups, and infrastructure damage is delaying assistance through Turkey. For more on the effort to reach those in need in Syria, let's cross to our UN correspondent in New York, Jessica Le Masurier. Jessica, you just attended a briefing there on the UN's humanitarian aid efforts. What's the latest that you can tell us?
Well, the situation is catastrophic, according to the United Nations, and many Syrians, most acutely in the northwest of the country, are in desperate need of aid. Of course, there are all those who've been killed. There are many people injured, and many people have lost their homes. And compounding all of that, it is freezing cold. It snowed this morning in Damascus, and those people without shelter, those people who are injured, children separated from their parents in some cases, are in desperate need of help. But the help is not getting there fast enough. The UN said that it had managed to mobilise some supplies that it already had on the ground and get those to some of the people most in need. But those supplies will soon run short. Essentially, Syria is really facing a crisis on top of a crisis. This was a country that was already at war, and now it's been so terribly impacted by this earthquake. Really getting aid to people fast is extremely important. Now, there is only one crossing from Turkey into Syria that the UN is allowed to use to bring in aid, according to the Security Council resolution on that. And that the road that is used by the UN for that crossing was damaged. Now, however, it seems that there may be some small glimmer of hope, as UN officials says that it appears that that road may now be usable, and so those cross-border aid convoys may be able to begin going in, but there are still restrictions and a huge amount of problems and challenges that the UN's facing.
And we know time is so important. Every hour that goes by lessens the chance to find survivors. So it really is a shame that there's so many challenges. Can you explain more of the challenges that any aid organization is going to run into when they're trying to get into and work in this part of Syria?
The UN was already facing huge problems when it came to delivering aid before this earthquake. So now the situation is even more acute. The essential problem is that the Syrian government wants to control all of the aid delivered within the country, and that UN efforts to get multiple border crossings available for delivering aid have been blocked in the Security Council by Russia. When there was this initial resolution in the Security Council back in 2014, for this cross-border mechanism, as it's called, there were 4 points of entry from Turkey into Syria. Now, thanks to the Russian veto being used multiple times in the Security Council, there is only one entry into Syria for those UN convoys. And as I said, that was blocked up until early today. It now seems that that may be reopening, but it has been a persistent problem for the UN humanitarian efforts when it comes to giving aid to Syrians, because they also have to get aid from government-controlled areas to rebel-controlled areas, and the government wants to be in charge of that every single time. So each time the UN has to wait for government approval. Now, the Syrian government said here, the ambassador said here at the UN, oh no, it's not our problem. We are making everything open and available. The problem is Western sanctions on Syria. But Western powers say, no, that's not the case at all, because sanctions don't apply to humanitarian aid. So really we're seeing a sort of tit for tat here at the UN, and fingers being pointed, and then people suffering on the ground due to this situation being politicised.
Jessica Le Masurier, our UN correspondent, thank you so much for breaking down this very complicated subject.